Hey everybody, it's Dustin again with the Webex Devices team. And today I'm really excited to bring you a video that's going to be part of an ongoing series in regards to interoperability and integrations that I will be doing. And this is actually a video that's kind of an update or a supplement to one that I've already done, which was titled, How to Make Cisco Devices Work Better in Zoom Meetings. So go back and check that video. Subscribe if you haven't. You can go back and look at the channel and see it. It's still very relevant. This is just something building on top of it. But what we're going to show today is actually going to be kind of a three-part video. Just a little intro here, and then I'm going to show you a macro. And actually, before I go any further, I have to stop and give credit to a good friend and partner of ours here at Cisco, and that's Bobby over at Harvard. This is pretty much his brainchild. We've worked with him to kind of help develop and help kind of grow this macro. And then we've also worked with our internal engineering as well as with Zoom engineering folks to try to enhance this to provide a lot more features to allow Cisco devices to work much better in Zoom meetings. So expect more work from this, but again, all credit to him. He's done most of the heavy lifting, and this is definitely his baby, and you're going to see the credit when we start actually looking at the macro here for him. But again, kind of three parts of this video, just this little intro. We're going to demo this macro. So I'm actually going to show you it being used kind of live. We're going to demo it, show you how it's going to work. So that way you can see some of the things that are possible with leveraging Cisco devices, just leveraging the macros and the APIs that we have available to make your experience much better when you go to join a Zoom meeting. Finally, at the very end, for those who are more interested in it, all of the nerds out there like me, we're actually going to go through showing you how the macros, this is a series of macros, are uploaded, how they kind of work together, and how you can do some custom configurations and some very easy things that you can change depending on what your specific needs are for you, your company, your device, and your tenant. And furthermore, we'll actually do some follow-up videos as we continue to evolve this macro, get some feedback, post it here. We'll also talk about how this is going to be up on our roomos.cisco.com site. That'll be listed in the comments below and description below, but we'll go into more detail about some of the things that we're looking at doing as well. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get ready to jump right in. So I'm going to do my screen change here. So you see here that I'm actually kind of showing you kind of a virtual representation of a device I have over here. And what I've got here is my navigator. Now this could be a touch 10, but this is actually a room navigator right now. And then I'm just kind of showing one screen right now on a room panorama. And I'm doing that for a reason, but we're going to pretend as though this is just a single screen system. And you're going to treat it as such because I want to keep this more useful to the more common scenarios. So one of the first things you're going to see here is I have a Join Zoom button on my actual navigator. So I'm going to go ahead and click it. And when you see here, it's going to pop up. It's going to ask you, for a couple different things. So first thing is that it's going to ask you for your meeting ID. So I'm going to go ahead and enter one in here. And don't worry, these numbers will change before I publish this video, so people will not have access to the meeting ID and the passcode and the host role. But I entered my meeting ID, and I could hit connect to Zoom right now. So if I wanted to manually put my passcode in later, I could do that, or I could put it in now. I'm defaulting to join as a participant, but in this particular instance, I want to make it easier, so I'm going to go ahead and put my passcode in. Super secret, makes me think of Spaceballs for those who are nerds like me and have that reference. And then I'm actually going to change my role here. I'm going to join as a host. And the reason why is I want to show you kind of the way the menu is going to work here, some of the things that you can do. So I'm going to go ahead and choose host. Because I'm doing that, it's going to ask me for my host key. Now this one's even more secret. So I'm going to enter it in, hit enter, and now I'm ready to go. You see, I've got all of my information ready to go, and what this is going to do is actually kind of form a dial string to allow me to join the meeting and kind of go ahead and join as a host. So I'm going to go ahead and hit connect to Zoom, and it's going to tell you that I'm entering the meeting, and as you'll see, I'm in, and you're seeing on my screen above me here that I have a Cisco box from a DX that I have, a DX80 sitting down here on the floor. So you're getting a great view of that. And I kind of wanted to have a participant in here because I wanted to show you exactly how some of these features are going to work. And I kind of wanted to have somebody in here already to make it easier for the demo. But if you look at my navigator, if I come down here and press more, you'll see that I have this new menu that's popped up that wasn't there before that says Zoom Tools. So I'm going to click on the Zoom Tools. And this is a great kind of three-part menu system. Now, the very first menu here is host controls. Now, if I had joined as a participant, this would not show up because I would not have those features or capabilities yet. So this is just something that is going to be for people who join as a host. But everything from being able to start, stop recordings to lock or unlock a meeting, enable, disable, mute on entry. I mean, everything that you guys can read here, mute all, unmute all. These are things that are DTMF commands that Zoom has incorporated. And some of these are newer. So some of these people may not be aware of. But these are things that have been incorporated that this menu system allows you to kind of easily do these without having to memorize these commands or these series of tones that you would have to enter in for those who are familiar with DTMF. Also, everything from like enable, disable, waiting room. I'm actually going to go ahead and show you how that works because I'm actually going to bring in a Zoom client and kind of show you how this would actually work. But for example, I'm going to go ahead and press the button here to enable, disable waiting room. And as you see up above that, the waiting room has been enabled and I'm getting an alert there. And you also saw a screen kind of splash up. I'm going to touch on that in a minute, but Zoom has actually added some new features to where you can remove that. I wanted it to show for this particular video, but at the end of this, when we go through the config, we'll talk about how you can disable some of those meeting or those menus that pop up. So just kind of going through here, showing you a few other things. So general, we've got some things like raise, lower hand. These are all the commands that are available to you from the DTMF menus that Zoom has through the CRC connector. So for example, I can say show meeting information. And you'll see here that it pops up. And I also have a little X box on my navigator here or on my touch device where I can clear that out. But just kind of showing you some of the features that you already have. Even from a video perspective, we can do some different things. Now, before I go any further, what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go ahead and admit another or have another client kind of dial in. Now, this is something that's really neat because this is relatively new feature that Zoom has done. So I'm actually going to be joining this meeting. Whoops, I hit the wrong button there. I hit start instead of join. So I'm going to join a meeting. I'm going to join this one in. I'm going to enter in that super secret passcode, but I'm actually going to be joining in on my Zoom client. You're going to see another view of me. So you'll notice here that I've got the please wait. The meeting host will let you join in soon, and it's talking about my personal meeting room. And over here on my screen, you're going to see that it has popped up and has letting me know that Dustin Baker Cisco is in the waiting room. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that I'm going to hit show participant lists. And you'll see here that I only have the two people in the meeting and I have one person starred below that's in the waiting room. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to go ahead and say admit waiting room participants. So I'm going to click on that. And just like that, I'm going to join in. You see on my Zoom client. I'm going to mute over here so we don't have some audio feedback. But you'll see that I now have the Zoom client in, and you're seeing me from all different angles here. And you'll see over here that I also have the system, joining here, and I've got my DX, and I have both of them in here. So I was able to do that with my Zoom tools. I was able to admit the waiting room participants as a host. So I have some host controls. A couple other things I want to show you is some simple things like raise lower hand. I can press that button here. You'll see that I have up here listed that I've raised my hand. Over here, you'll see on the Zoom client that the hand has been raised. I'm going to press the button again on my touch, and you'll see that it goes away. And then I have other video controls, some things like show names, hide names. If I press that, you'll see that they go away on my Cisco device. I'm going to turn those back on. And I can do things like change the gallery screen. I can change my video layout. So if I want to do the side by side or equal, I want to be able to just do the prominent, go back. So basically, most of the controls that you would expect to have or that you would like to have are going to be available to you now. And the really cool thing about it is that this is all done through the DTMF tones that Zoom already provides. So we're just leveraging that, but we're also leveraging the macro framework that we have that are part of our devices innately to kind of enable this and make it easier for you to use. So now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and go to my host controls, and I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting for all. And you'll see that the meeting has been ended by the host. So I get that little nice information there. And I'm right back to my system here, and all my devices have joined or escaped that meeting. Okay, so that was the demo. And what I'm going to do now is kind of go through and talk about and bring up the actual macro here in a second and show you how to upload it, but also show you some of the config changes. Now, I want to talk about them real briefly before I go and actually show this because a couple of things that we're working on and that will be added are, Zoom has added the ability for dual screen systems. So if you have a dual screen system, and I didn't show it here, but I will show it in a later video. I'm gonna do another video for that. Also, kind of a new private or personal mode type video enhancement we're looking to do with this macro, as well as kind of showing some other things like the suppressing some of those menus, so those menus don't pop up all of the time. These are things that are being added or have been added to both Zoom CRC as well as the macro we're working on. But those things are possible, and we're going to kind of show you how to configure and make this work for you based off of what your needs are for your tenant. So cue the nerdy stuff, but now we're going to go ahead and bring up our browser here. So one of the first things I want to mention here is that there's actually quite a few macros that are a part of this. And one thing that Bobby and I were talking about actually earlier today is that it's very important that these are split up into three main macros, and it's the main, the join text, and the config. These will all three be available via GitHub, but you need these three mainly. There's also these memory functions and memory storage macros. The memory functions will be the only one that you'd have to upload. The memory storage is actually created by the Zoom macro for you, but that will only be needed if you want to be able to do some of the private meeting stuff. And I'll go more into detail on that or the personal mode system type macros. We'll go more into that in another video. But the big takeaway here is that we've got version 4.1.0 here that we're demoing. This is a little bit of a tweaked version of it actually, but the big thing is that all three of your main macros here, they need to be on the same version. So I would not want to be 4.1.0 here and 4.0.0 on this one. They are relying on each other, and it's very important that you keep them the same. So if you update one, you'll want to update all three of them. Another thing to note is that we use some new APIs here, which I'm going to start talking about as we go through this. Some of these APIs are newer APIs. So one specifically is DTMF. We now have the ability to suppress or remove DTMF sounds whenever you send a command. That is a new API that requires, if you're on-prem, CE 915 or greater. If you're using Room OS, that's on Room OS 10 or Room OS 9, that's a cloud registered device. It's already included in those, obviously, so you'll be good to go there. So the only problem is if you want to be able to utilize some of these commands, you need to update your version. So if you go to a version before that, some of these commands and some of these features just won't work, but the macro itself will still work. And we've tested this on quite a few devices and even older devices. And so far, we've had great success with this working on most devices that are out there. So we've got these macros on here. Now, I'm not going to go through exactly how to upload a macro, but you'll go to import from file. And like I said, you'll want to, at least from the main part of this, upload these three macros. At the time, we've got 4.1.0. I know that as I'm recording this, we're actually working on a dot revision. So this may change from the video to what is actually available in the links that we have. But just know again that these need to match. So the main macro here is actually the only one you have to turn on. Everything else can be called and be from this main macro. This is the only one you actually have to turn on. But through here you see we got the credit here from Bobby, who works at Harvard and is extremely fantastic in all of this. And we also basically just have some general notes, talks about the script and the dependencies are there. As you see here, that this one does show that you have the dependencies of these additional macros. And we're not going to go into too much detail here because you guys will be able to read this and this will probably change. But the big thing I want to go here and show you is the Zoom config macro. So when you go to this macro, The biggest part that I want to go here is this config section right here in the middle. Now, some of this stuff doesn't matter as much, except for the fact that the macro version number, we talk about that. The SIP pattern it wants to look for, which is the zoomcrc.com. This could be different depending on what part of the world you're in, or if you want to be specific to a cluster, like whether you're in EMEA or Asia Pac, whatever it is. But you can make some customizations here that's for your specific org and what you want to actually dial. But this is going through kind of showing you some of the different things that you can add or you can customize. Another one is additional flavor text. So this is basically when you go to enter the meeting ID. So, and I'm going to bring that one menu back up here. Let me see if I get the right one. Yeah. So when I click here and I hit the enter meeting ID, if I add something inside of here, where the little parentheses or the single quotes are, that would show up below here. So if you wanted to do some additional text or flavor, like the meeting ID should be found inside your email or your meeting invite, or go to whatever website to get your meeting ID. Like, you can kind of customize that, but it's an extra field that will go right here to give you some the ability to kind of add some additional some text to that. We didn't have anything in there, so you don't see anything when I just brought that back up. The security mode. So this is something that's kind of new too. This is a really neat feature where, and you see here by the description, it says it deletes the last call from recents if it includes at Zoom CRC. Now the note here is that it does not exist or not search and clear pre-existing entries, but this is a request that we have. I had it turned off right now, but you can just simply change this variable right here to on. And now what'll happen is, and once you see I made a change, so I have to save this macro. But now that I've saved this macro, now, whenever I go to use this macro and I use the Zoom meeting ID, the passcode, and the host key, after the call is over, it will actually go through and delete that entry. So that way, when you go to look at the history, you don't see that full dial string, which includes the meeting ID, the passcode, and the host key. So that may be some information that you don't want to share because it would be in the CDR, the call detail record. This will actually remove that just from a security aspect. So you have that option to turn that on if you want to. The other new one, this is relatively new, is the suppress menu. So what this is, and I had it turned off, and we're going to do some additional videos, probably one around the dual screen, which I'll talk about here in a second. I had it turned off because I wanted to be able to let you kind of see what was happening in the background. But when you turn this to off, it will actually suppress some of those menus that were popping up that you do. Now, it does not suppress all menus. So, like, if I want to do the participant list as a host, or I want to be able to do the admit all, those are menus that you need to be able to see. So when you turn this on, it'll just give you a better user experience because you can send these DTMF commands and not have that black screen pop up every time you do it. So a really nice feature that we were working with Zoom, and that's been asked for by a lot of our customers, and they added that, which has been very popular. A lot of people don't know about it, but I wanted to kind of put that in there. So if you change this to on, it will modify the dial string to ensure that when you join that, you will not see those unless you need to, or you have a menu that kind of requires it. Dual screen. Now, this is a great feature that is available for Zoom CRC. So if you do have a dual screen feature, Zoom has added in the ability to modify your dial string to let it know that you have a dual screen system. And what it kind of does, it's pretty brilliant, is it allows you to leverage both screens on your Cisco device. So it does it in a really fancy way, but it uses the content channel. It's really, really smart. But it allows you to utilize both screens, to be able to see participants whenever content's not being shared. Now, when content gets shared, everything goes back to a single screen system, and you'll have your content on your right screen, same that you would have on a Cisco Webex meeting, for example. But it's nice to be able to utilize dual screen systems in a Zoom meeting and still get a little bit more options on your layouts. There's three options here. We have on, and we have off, and then we have auto. So really the difference here is going to be, like, if I turn it on, it's going to dial that dial string every time. Now, if you don't have a dual screen device, it could provide a little bit of a weird experience. So we have a default where we're going to set to auto. And what we'll do here is that we will attempt to kind of determine based on the HDMI output connectivity. So we're going to be able to grab an X status, for example. Again, this is why I love our devices. I love the macro engine. I love the APIs that we have available because we can do some intelligence like this. So it's going to check and see if you actually have, two screens or even three screens, connected. And what it'll do is it will make that determination when it goes to do the dial string as to whether or not it needs to add that additional command to the dial string to say that it is a dual screen system. So you can set this to auto to where you don't have to worry about it. We also realize that there could be a scenario where maybe this doesn't work right, or you're doing something a little bit weird, or there could be a false positive or a false negative. So if you want to strictly make it off or on, you can just adjust that here, save the macro, and that setting will be changed for you. Moving forward, this is some regex information to talk about in regards to the meeting, the passcode, the host key, and kind of depending on what your account rules for your Zoom org are. Most people will not need to change this, but we do have a regex section here that allows you to do that. And we also have kind of a check here to make sure that that the meeting ID, the host keys, things like that are valid to help make sure that you're actually dialing correctly. And I'm going to, sorry, I got to pop up here. So there's a couple other things here about how the new the join button works. Now, this personal mode, right, how I have it set to false. And there's a new and a classic style. We're going to do a video specifically on this to kind of show you what the personal mode is. So I'm not going to go into great detail here, but there's also this kind of an ask where, we realize that not everybody has or uses WebEx, and, we have the join WebEx button there, which you saw on my device. It is possible to remove that. It's just an API command that hides that. If you don't ever want to join WebExes or you want to get rid of that, you can just change this value to false, and it will just, the macro will go ahead and hide that button for you. You can do it here, or you may have already done it. This is just kind of an easy way for you to do it. And then this is the DTMF tools menu. Remember I had the Zoom tools that popped up. This is basically, you want this set to true because that's what will allow that menu system to come up. So if I set this to false, maybe I just want to have an easy join button or an easy dialer. I could do that and not bring up those tools if I didn't have a use for it. The tools are great. I think you should use them. But if you have that use case, this is a very customizable macro. You can remove that if you don't want it. And then the last thing I want to talk about here is the DTMF feedback. Now, this one is something that is great because we really evolved this with another customer, and this is something that I'm glad that we have done. But out of this, we've kind of developed and made some new features. But when you send DTMF feedback on a device, especially if you have a high volume, like around 70 or 80, on your device, and you want to be able to hear the people, you go to send those buttons and those DTMF commands to enter the digits in, and they are loud. They are way too loud. So the first kind of additions of this, what we did was we said, okay, well, we got to find a way to get rid of this. We got to do something. And so we did a soften or an audio ducking type feature, which I came up with. And the idea here was that, okay, so I go to enter in a command, I would get the value of the current volume. Let's say it was at 70. I would then store that value. I would change the system volume down to like around 20, send the DTMF command, and then I would readjust the volume back up to 70. So what it would do in essence would be that, I still wanted to have an audio or an audible kind of indicator that my commands were going through. So what we did was allowed it to kind of bring down so it wasn't quite as abrupt. You could still hear people were talking, but you could also tell that something happened, and then it would bring it back up. So if you want that kind of audio ducking or soften feature, you would just set this variable here to soften. Bobby came up with a great idea as far as like just being able to change the tone. So he did tone, which basically will send a different tone, which is a lot milder. It's still at a higher volume. You can test with that, see if you like it. It's just another option. And then the one I'm probably most proud of is we now have the ability, and this is the one API that I was telling you that's new that requires CE 915 or greater, or a new version of Room OS, and that is the off. So now you can choose to be able to send a DTMF command from the system and the API and tell it not to make any audible noise whatsoever. So if I want it to be kind of a completely quiet mode and just be able to send the commands, work very similar to how like the existing layout buttons or buttons do on a touch 10 or navigator, I can kind of simulate or emulate that same mode and just basically not send a tone at all. So, and then of course for the threshold here, this is the audio threshold for the soften mode. This is where it would take that volume down to 25 is what we have set by default here. So with that being said, this is kind of a long video, and I'm going to change my scene back here. A lot of information, and I'm really, really excited about this. We're going to continue on this series. We're going to continue to improve this macro, and we're going to add some additional videos talking about some of the dual screen capabilities as well as the personal mode. Again, big shout out to Bobby. Big thanks to him for doing a vast majority of this work. There's probably other improvements and things that you would like to see. Just comment below, subscribe. Let us know. We're really working hard to try to make your Cisco devices work better on all meeting platforms. So stay tuned. We got a lot of really exciting things that we're working on, and there's a lot more cool things that we want to show you. And just I can't wait to show them to you. So subscribe as I create these videos. You're going to see those. And again, we'll look forward to your comments, your questions, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.